A child is missing, the storm is coming, and the only person who still knows what to do is the man everyone ignored. The word spread through the crowded lobby of Silver Ridge Mountain Resort faster than the sound of the winter wind outside. Guests stopped talking. Employees looked toward the front desk. A mother's voice trembled as she called her daughter's name again and again, but the answer never came. Madeline Brooks, a successful CEO who had built an empire through confidence and control, stood frozen beneath the warm golden lights of the resort entrance. For the first time in years, money, influence, and power meant nothing. Her 7-year-old daughter Emma was somewhere beyond the busy trails, and every second felt heavier than the last. Around her, people rushed in different directions. Resort staff checked cameras. Visitors searched their memories. The ski patrol prepared their equipment. But one man remained still. Caleb Whitmore stood near the edge of the room wearing a simple ski instructor jacket, his expression calm, while everyone else carried fear in their eyes. To most people at Silver Ridge, Caleb was just another employee who taught beginners how to enjoy the mountains. A quiet single father who arrived early, left late, and never talked about himself. They knew he had a young son named Noah. They knew he lived in a small cabin a few miles from the resort. They knew he preferred silence over attention. What they did not know was that Caleb understood the mountains in a way few people ever could. He had spent years learning patience, discipline, and responsibility long before he ever wore a ski instructor badge. But Caleb never introduced himself with titles. He never looked for applause. He believed character was shown in moments when nobody was watching. "We need to organize the search," Caleb said quietly. His voice was calm, but it carried across the room. Several people turned toward him with surprise. One resort manager hesitated. "Caleb, you teach skiing. Are you sure you should be leading this?" The question hung in the air. Madeline looked at him too, wondering if this quiet man truly understood what was happening. Caleb did not argue. He did not defend his pride. He simply looked toward the snowy windows and then back at the worried mother. "Right now, we are not looking for recognition," he said. "We are looking for a little girl who needs someone to find her." The room became silent. Outside, snow moved softly across the mountain slopes, covering tracks and changing the landscape with every passing minute. Caleb picked up his radio and began calmly coordinating with the ski patrol team. His movements were steady. His words were precise. It was the kind of confidence that did not demand attention. It earned it. And as the search began, no one noticed the small boy standing nearby, watching his father carefully. Noah Whitmore knew something others did not. His father had always taught him that the mountains speak quietly, and those who respect them learn how to listen. But no one at Silver Ridge knew that this simple search would reveal a past Caleb had spent years keeping hidden. A past that would make an entire resort finally understand the man behind the silence. Before the story takes a turn, subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss what happens next. And tell me, do you think she should trust him? Let me know in the comments. Now, let's continue. The first thing people noticed about Caleb Whitmore was not his skill. It was his silence. While the resort lobby filled with worried voices and hurried footsteps, Caleb stood near the large glass windows, watching the mountain with the patience of someone who understood that panic only made difficult moments harder. He had learned long ago that fear moved quickly, but clear thinking moved people home. "We need every available person checking the lower trails and beginner areas," Caleb said into the radio. "Stay organized. Keep communication open. We find Emma by staying calm." The ski patrol team followed his instructions almost immediately. Even the employees who had once seen him as just another instructor began looking at him differently. There was something about the way he spoke, the way he listened, and the way he carried responsibility without needing anyone to notice. Madeline Brooks watched from a few feet away. She was used to boardrooms filled with executives who competed to be heard. She was used to people proving their importance through expensive suits, powerful connections, and confident speeches. But Caleb was different. He stood in an ordinary jacket with snow on his boots. Yet somehow he was the most composed person in the room. "How do you know what to do?" Madeline finally asked. Caleb looked at her briefly. His expression softened when he saw the worry in her eyes. Because when someone is missing, the most important thing is not who gets credit. It is making sure they come back safely. Those words stayed with her. For years, Madeline had measured people by achievements, titles, and results. She had built a billion-dollar company by understanding competition. But this man seemed to live by something different, something quieter, something deeper. Outside, the mountains stretched beneath a blanket of white. The wind moved through the pine trees, carrying the sound of the search teams across the slopes. Caleb continued checking details that others overlooked. He studied the weather. He asked about Emma's clothing. He listened carefully when Madeline described the last moment she saw her daughter. Every small piece mattered. Nearby, Noah Whitmore stood beside the equipment room, holding his father's old compass that Caleb had allowed him to carry during outdoor lessons. The boy looked at the snowy landscape and remembered every conversation with his father. The mountain is not your enemy, Caleb had always told him. Respect it, listen to it, and it will tell you what you need to know. Noah looked toward a quiet section of the trail and noticed something unusual. A small mark in the snow. A tiny trail that did not match the direction everyone had been searching. He did not shout. He did not run. He simply walked toward his father and gently touched his arm. "Dad, I think someone went this way." Caleb looked down at his son, then followed his eyes toward the untouched snow. For a moment, the entire mountain seemed to become quiet, because sometimes the smallest voice carries the biggest answer. And nobody at Silver Ridge knew that Noah's observation would soon reveal the kind of family Caleb had built through years of patience, love, and quiet strength. The moment Caleb looked toward the untouched snow, the atmosphere around Silver Ridge changed. A few minutes earlier, everyone had been searching with fear. Now, they were searching with purpose. Caleb knelt near the trail, studying the small signs that most people would have walked past without noticing. It was not about having the loudest voice or the strongest presence. It was about patience. It was about understanding that every detail mattered when someone needed help. "This path is less crowded," Caleb said quietly. "The snow here is different. Someone small may have passed through recently." A member of the ski patrol looked surprised. "You can tell that from this?" Caleb simply nodded. "The mountain always leaves clues. We just have to respect the silence enough to see them." Madeline stood nearby, listening carefully. The woman who had built a successful company by making fast decisions found herself slowing down. She watched Caleb move with a calm confidence that felt completely different from the urgency around them. He did not act like someone trying to impress people. He acted like someone carrying a responsibility he took personally. Noah followed close beside his father, carefully observing everything. Caleb never pushed him aside or told him to stay quiet. Instead, he guided him gently. "What do you notice?" Caleb asked. Noah looked around. "The wind is stronger near the open areas," he answered. If Emma was scared, she might have looked for somewhere protected. Caleb smiled slightly. It was a small moment, but Madeline noticed it. She saw a father teaching his son not only how to survive outdoors, but how to think, how to stay calm, and how to care about others. The search continued deeper into the afternoon. The bright morning light slowly disappeared behind heavy clouds, and the mountain became quieter. Resort guests who had once ignored Caleb now watched him with respect. The same man they had passed every day without noticing was now the person everyone trusted. Yet Caleb remained the same. He checked the radios. He listened to every update. He made sure every team member felt heard. He never once mentioned his own experience or expected praise. Madeline finally walked beside him. "You have done this before, haven't you?" she asked. Caleb looked ahead at the snowy trail. For a moment, something from his past appeared in his eyes, something he quickly buried. "I've spent a lot of years learning how to bring people home," he answered. It was not a complete explanation, but it was enough to make her curious. Before she could ask another question, Noah suddenly stopped. His eyes focused on a small area near a group of pine trees. "Dad," he whispered. Caleb turned. The boy pointed toward a tiny piece of colorful fabric caught on a branch. Everyone became still. It was a simple discovery, but it changed everything. Because sometimes hope does not arrive with noise. Sometimes it appears quietly, waiting for someone patient enough to notice. And in that moment, the people at Silver Ridge began to understand that Caleb Whitmore was not just following a trail. He was following a promise to bring a child safely home. The small piece of fabric caught on the pine branch changed the mood of the entire search team. It was not a dramatic discovery. It was not a loud moment. It was simply a quiet sign that someone had been there. But for a mother waiting in fear, that small sign felt like a spark of hope in the middle of a cold mountain afternoon. Madeline Brooks stepped closer, her eyes fixed on the colorful fabric. "That is hers," she whispered. Her voice carried both relief and fear because now they knew Emma had been nearby, but they also knew the mountain was much larger than anyone imagined. Caleb carefully examined the area without rushing. He looked at the trees, the direction of the wind, and the shape of the snow around them. He listened before he acted. That was what made him different. Many people searched with urgency. Caleb searched with understanding. "We continue from here," he said calmly. "Everyone stay together. We move carefully, and we keep communication open." The ski patrol team followed his instructions without hesitation. The same people who once saw him as only an instructor now looked at him as someone they could trust. Madeline watched him closely. She noticed the way he checked on everyone around him, not just the search itself. He asked if the younger team members needed a break. He made sure Noah stayed warm. He even reminded everyone to drink water despite the cold. It was a kind of leadership she rarely saw. In her world, leadership was often measured by confidence and authority. Caleb showed another kind, the kind built on responsibility. "You really are different from most people here," Madeline said quietly as they walked. Caleb looked at her with a small, thoughtful expression. "Most people are carrying something you cannot see." She looked at him, surprised by the answer. "What are you carrying?" For a moment, the mountain became still. The question touched a part of Caleb's life he had spent years keeping private. He looked toward Noah, who was walking a few steps ahead. "A promise," he finally said, "to be there for my son, to do better than yesterday." Madeline felt the weight behind those simple words. She had spent years building a company where every decision was about growth and success. But standing on a snowy mountain, following a quiet single father who asked for nothing in return, she began to understand a different kind of strength. A strength that did not need attention. A strength that existed even when nobody was watching. As the search continued, Noah noticed another detail near the edge of the trail. A small drawing tucked beneath a tree branch. It was a picture of a mountain with a little house beside it. Madeline immediately recognized it. Emma always carried drawings with her. "She made this," Madeline said softly. Caleb picked up the paper carefully. He studied it for a moment, then looked toward a narrow path leading between the trees. "She was trying to leave a sign," he said. Everyone looked in the direction he was facing. The path ahead was quiet and covered in fresh snow. But Caleb did not see an empty trail. He saw a message waiting to be understood. And for the first time since the search began, everyone felt that they were not chasing a mystery anymore. They were following the careful steps of a little girl who believed someone would come for her. The quiet path between the pine trees seemed almost untouched, as if the mountain itself was protecting the secret hidden within the snow. Caleb Whitmore moved forward carefully, holding Emma's drawing in his hand. He did not rush. He did not let the pressure of the moment control him. The others followed his pace because they had learned something important about Caleb. Calm was not the absence of urgency. Calm was the ability to think clearly when everything around you felt uncertain. "The drawing tells us something," Caleb said softly. She was looking for shelter, not trying to go farther away. Madeline listened closely, holding on to every word. A few hours earlier, she had been surrounded by people offering solutions, but none of them gave her the sense of hope Caleb did. He never promised what he could not guarantee. He simply focused on what could be done. That honesty meant more to her than empty reassurance. Noah walked beside his father, carefully observing the ground. Caleb had always taught him that every place had a story. A trail, a footprint, a broken branch. Even the way snow rested on a surface could reveal something. The boy looked around quietly, just as his father had taught him. "Dad," Noah said, pointing toward a small area near the trees. Why is that snow different? Caleb looked where his son was pointing. A small section of snow appeared smoother than the area around it. It was a tiny detail, almost invisible to most people. But Caleb knew his son had learned to notice what others ignored. He placed a hand gently on Noah's shoulder. Good observation, he said. Always pay attention to the things that seem out of place. Madeline watched the moment between father and son. It was not just a lesson about the outdoors. It was a lesson about life. Caleb was not raising Noah to be fearless. He was raising him to be thoughtful. The search team carefully moved toward the area Noah discovered. As they approached, they noticed more signs that Emma had passed through recently. A small ribbon, a child's mitten, little reminders that she had been leaving clues behind. Madeline covered her mouth, fighting back tears. She was trying to help us find her, she whispered. Caleb nodded. She knew someone would come. Those words stayed with Madeline. Her daughter had believed in people, and now she was watching a stranger prove that belief was not misplaced. As the afternoon light faded behind the mountains, the temperature dropped and the quiet became deeper. The ski patrol team looked toward Caleb for direction, not because he demanded it, but because he had earned their trust. One of the patrol members finally asked the question everyone had been thinking. Caleb, where did you learn to handle situations like this? The question was simple, but for the first time, Caleb became completely silent. His eyes moved toward the distant mountains, toward memories he had carefully kept locked away. For years, he had chosen a quiet life. A small cabin, a normal job, time with his son. He had left behind the person he used to be. But now, standing beneath the cold sky with a missing child waiting to be found, the past he buried was beginning to return. And nobody knew that the man holding the radio was not just someone who understood the mountains. He was someone who had spent a lifetime learning how to guide people through impossible moments. The question from a ski patrol member remained in the cold mountain air. Caleb, where did you learn to handle situations like this? For a moment, nobody moved. The wind passed through the pine trees, and the sound of the snow beneath their boots became the only answer. Caleb Whitmore looked down at the radio in his hand. He had spent years keeping his past behind him, not because he was ashamed of it, but because he no longer wanted to live for yesterday. He wanted to be a father. He wanted to be present for Noah. He wanted a quiet life where his son knew him as dad, not as someone from an old story. A long time ago, Caleb finally said, I learned that people matter more than recognition. It was not the answer everyone expected, but it was the kind of answer that explained everything about him. One of the older ski patrol members, Daniel Mercer, stared at Caleb for a few seconds. His expression changed slowly, as if a forgotten memory had returned. Wait, Daniel said quietly. Caleb Whitmore. The group became still. Madeline looked between them, confused. You know him? Daniel did not answer immediately. He looked at Caleb with a mixture of surprise and respect. Years ago, there was a soldier with that name, a man known for staying calm when everyone else was overwhelmed, someone who put his team first and never wanted attention. Caleb lowered his eyes slightly. That was another chapter of my life. Madeline listened carefully. The quiet ski instructor standing beside her suddenly felt like a person she had never truly seen before. She remembered how easily she had assumed he was just another employee at the resort. A kind man, a helpful man, but still just a man working a simple job. Now she realized she had been looking at only one page of a much larger story. Noah looked up at his father with curiosity. He had heard pieces of the past before, but Caleb never told stories about himself. Dad, were you really someone important? Noah asked softly. Caleb smiled and placed a hand on his son's shoulder. The important part is being here with you. That answer said more than any title ever could. The search continued, but something had changed. People no longer followed Caleb because they were unsure what else to do. They followed him because they trusted his judgment. His experience was not something he used to stand above others. It was something he used to protect them. Madeline noticed that more than anything. In her world, success often came with a desire to be recognized. But Caleb carried something different. Humility, discipline, grace. As they moved deeper along the trail, the team discovered another clue left behind by Emma. A small reflection from a piece of her backpack caught the fading light near a sheltered area between the trees. Everyone stopped. Caleb raised his radio. "We are close." His voice remained calm, but everyone could hear the emotion behind those words. Madeline closed her eyes for a moment, holding on to hope. For the first time since her daughter disappeared, she felt something stronger than fear. She felt trust. And as the search team moved forward, together, the people of Silver Ridge began to understand that true heroes rarely announce who they are. They simply show up when someone needs them most. The reflection from Emma's backpack disappeared beneath the falling snow for only a moment, but Caleb Whitmore saw it. He always saw the details others missed. The search team moved closer together, their footsteps becoming quieter as they entered the sheltered area between the tall pine trees. The mountain felt different there. The wind was softer. The world seemed to slow down. "Stay together," Caleb said calmly. "We are close, but we stay careful." Nobody questioned him anymore. The same people who once thought of him as just another ski instructor now listened with complete trust. Madeline Brooks followed behind, holding on to every word and every sign that brought her closer to her daughter. She had spent years making decisions in crowded conference rooms, surrounded by experts and advisors. But this moment was different. There was no presentation, no strategy meeting, no business plan that could solve the fear inside her heart. There was only a mother hoping to hear her child's voice again. Caleb looked toward Noah. The boy stood quietly, studying the surroundings just like his father had taught him. "What do you notice?" Caleb asked. Noah looked around carefully. "The trees are blocking the wind here," he answered. "Someone would choose this place if they wanted to feel safe." Caleb nodded with pride. It was not just the answer that mattered. It was the way Noah had learned to think. Madeline watched them together and felt something change inside her. She had expected to find a skilled rescuer. She did not expect to find a father who had spent years teaching his son kindness, awareness, and responsibility. A few steps ahead, one of the ski patrol members noticed a small opening between the trees. Caleb approached slowly and called out in a gentle voice. "Emma, my name is Caleb. We are here to bring you back to your mom." For a few seconds, there was only silence. Madeline held her breath. Then a small voice answered from nearby. "Mom." The sound was quiet, almost hidden beneath the winter air. But it was enough. Madeline covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. The search team moved carefully toward the voice, and Caleb stayed calm, guiding everyone with patience. Moments later, Emma was found safe in a protected area where she had stayed warm and waited for someone to find her. She was tired and emotional, but she was safe. Madeline rushed forward and held her daughter close. The fear that had filled her all afternoon finally began to disappear. "I knew someone would come," Emma whispered. Madeline looked over at Caleb. She understood what those words meant. Emma had trusted that someone would care, and Caleb had proven that trust was not misplaced. Noah stood beside his father, quietly watching the reunion. He did not celebrate loudly. He simply smiled because he knew what his father always believed. Helping someone was never about being called a hero. It was about doing the right thing when the moment arrived. As the group prepared to return to the resort, Daniel Mercer looked at Caleb with a new sense of respect. "You really did not want anyone to know, did you?" he asked. Caleb looked toward his son and smiled softly. "The past belongs where it happened. Today belongs to the people standing in front of me." The mountain grew quiet again, but this time, the silence was not filled with fear. It was filled with gratitude, because everyone at Silver Ridge had finally seen the truth about the quiet man they had overlooked. The ride back to Silver Ridge Mountain Resort felt completely different from the journey that had taken them into the snow-covered forest. Hours earlier, the mountain had been filled with uncertainty and fear. Now, the same trails that once felt endless carried a feeling of relief. Emma Brooks sat safely beside her mother, wrapped in a warm blanket, while Noah Whitmore walked near his father with a quiet smile. Caleb noticed everything, but he never looked for attention. He simply made sure everyone was okay. That was who he had always been. When they reached the resort, people gathered outside waiting for news. Guests who had spent the afternoon wondering who this quiet ski instructor was now watched him with admiration. But Caleb walked past the attention as if it belonged to someone else. Madeline Brooks noticed that more than anything. "You saved my daughter," she said softly as she approached him. Caleb shook his head. "A lot of people helped today, but you led them," Madeline replied. "You gave everyone a reason to believe she would be found." Caleb looked down for a moment, almost uncomfortable with the praise. He was not used to being thanked. For years, he had chosen a life where nobody asked about his past. A simple cabin, a simple job, a quiet routine with his son. Madeline studied him carefully. The man standing in front of her was not what she expected when she arrived at Silver Ridge. She had expected employees, managers, and professionals who wanted to impress her because of her company and her reputation. Instead, the person who changed everything was a man who owned almost nothing but carried something far more valuable: integrity. Later that evening, after the resort became quiet again, Madeline found Caleb near the edge of the property, watching the lights reflect across the snow. "I hope you understand how grateful I am," she said. Caleb smiled slightly. "I understand what it feels like when someone you love needs help. That is enough." Madeline looked at him with curiosity. "You really do not want anyone to know about your past, do you?" Caleb was silent for a moment. The question was gentle, but it reached a place he rarely allowed others to see. "People can spend their whole lives chasing recognition," he said. "I spent mine learning that the people beside you matter more than the people watching you." Those words stayed with her. She thought about the executives she worked with every day, the people who measured success through numbers and achievements. Then she looked at Caleb and realized there was another kind of success, the kind built quietly over time, the kind a child could feel from a father who always showed up. Before leaving, Madeline thanked Noah as well. "You helped us find Emmett today," she said. Noah smiled. "My dad taught me to pay attention." Caleb looked at his son with pride. It was a small moment, but Madeline understood its meaning. The greatest thing Caleb had built was not a career or a reputation. It was the person his son was becoming. That night, inside the quiet cabin surrounded by snow-covered trees, Caleb placed his old military keepsakes back into a wooden box. He had hoped that chapter of his life would remain forgotten. But fate had a way of opening doors that people thought were closed forever. And somewhere in the distance, the world was beginning to learn the story of the man who never wanted to be called a hero. The morning after the search, Silver Ridge Mountain Resort felt different. The same snow-covered trails stretched across the valley. The same warm lights glowed through the windows of the lodge. But the people walking through those doors were no longer looking at Caleb Whitmore the same way. Before, he had been the quiet single father who taught visitors how to ski, the man who smiled politely, finished his work, and disappeared into the peaceful routine of mountain life. Now, people saw something they had never noticed before. They saw the character behind the silence. Madeline Brooks returned to the resort that afternoon, but this time she did not arrive as a CEO surrounded by schedules and responsibilities. She arrived as a mother who wanted to thank the person who gave her family a second chance. She carried a small gift bag in her hand, but she knew no gift could truly represent what Caleb had done. When she reached his cabin, she stopped for a moment before knocking. The place was simple, a small wooden cabin surrounded by tall pine trees. No signs of wealth, no reminders of achievements, just a home filled with warmth. Caleb opened the door with Noah standing beside him. "Madeline," he said with a surprised smile, "you did not have to come all the way here." She looked at him and smiled. "Yes, I did." Inside the cabin, Madeline noticed the small details that revealed who Caleb truly was. Family photos on the wall, Noah's drawings near the kitchen table, a shelf filled with books about history, nature, and leadership. Then her eyes stopped on a wooden box sitting quietly in the corner. It was not displayed proudly. It was almost hidden, but something about it caught her attention. "Is that from your time in the military?" she asked gently. Caleb became quiet. For a moment, the confident man who guided everyone through the mountain seemed like someone protecting an old memory. "It is from another part of my life," he answered. Madeline did not push. She understood something important. Caleb was not hiding his past because he wanted to pretend it never happened. He was simply a man who did not believe his past made him better than anyone else. Later, Daniel Mercer from the ski patrol arrived at the cabin. He looked at Madeline and then at Caleb. "I guess people finally know now," Daniel said. Caleb smiled slightly. "They know a story. Not everything." Daniel nodded. He understood. The medals, the years of service, the difficult moments, they were only pieces of a much bigger picture. The real story was the man who came home and chose to become a father. The man who taught his son compassion instead of pride. The man who helped others without expecting anything in return. Madeline looked at Caleb differently now. Not because of his past, not because of the recognition he never wanted, but because she finally understood the reason everyone trusted him. His strength was never about what he had done. It was about who he chose to be every single day. As the sun lowered behind the mountains, painting the snow with golden light, Noah stepped outside and looked across the quiet landscape. Caleb joined him. For a moment, father and son stood together without saying a word. They did not need to. Some bonds are built through conversations. Others are built through years of showing up. And on that peaceful mountain evening, Madeline realized something she would never forget. The world often searches for heroes in famous places. But sometimes, the greatest ones are the people quietly standing beside us all along. Thanks for spending your time with us today. If this story meant something to you, don't forget to subscribe and support the channel. And I'm curious, how old are you? And did this story feel relatable to you? Let me know in the comments. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.